Emily had a flash marriage with Michael Smith, who was the uncle of her friend Mary. After the wedding, he hurriedly went abroad for business and gifted her a villa and a bank card before leaving. Though she wanted to refuse, he had already turned away and left with an umbrella. Not long before this, Emily's father, desperate to repay gambling debts, tried to force her to marry a 50-year-old man. Her best friend Mary suggested Emily marry her uncle Michael instead, a handsome, wealthy man whose family was pressuring him to settle down and get married soon. Emily agreed. A year later, Emily had become a doctor. Her husband Michael finally returned to the country. Stepping out of his car surrounded by bodyguards, he stood at the hospital entrance. His friend Tom teased him for spoiling his wife, as Michael had just acquired the hospital to gift her. Michael replied, "I've been away for a year and owe her too much. Giving her a hospital isn't enough to make up for it." Suddenly, an angry patient's family member confronted Emily, blaming her because his wife had given birth to a daughter rather than the son he had always desired. Emily calmly explained that hospital rules prohibited disclosing fetal gender in advance. She produced the wife's medical report, accusing the man of forcing his heavily pregnant wife to take harmful folk remedies in pursuit of a son, which caused her life-threatening hemorrhage during delivery. Unrepentant, the man raised a knife to attack Emily, but Michael swiftly kicked him down and pulled Emily into his arms. Though they found each other familiar, neither recognized the other. When the man tried to attack again, Michael subdued him once more, and Tom ordered bodyguards to remove the troublemaker. Emily's colleague Anna envied her, noting that the man who protected her was Michael, the hospital's new genius doctor, heir to the Smith Pharmaceutical Group, and their new CEO. Olivia sarcastically remarked that Emily had seduced Michael on purpose. The department director announced that Michael would select one of them as his assistant. Confident, Olivia believed she'd be chosen. As she left, she provocatively bumped into Emily's shoulder. Later, during their meeting with Michael, Olivia tried to flirt by exposing her shoulder and boasting, "I excel in all areas, especially in handling men." Michael dryly replied, "Handling men? Then we'll assign you to the urology department." Humiliated, Olivia stormed out. When Emily handed Michael her resume, he found her name oddly familiar, but still didn't recognize her. Just then, his niece Mary called, demanding he bring his wife home for dinner. Michael decided to buy gifts for his wife, and Emily offered suggestions. Impressed, he appointed her as his personal assistant. Thrilled, she addressed him as Professor. Following her advice, Michael purchased lavish gifts. Emily remarked wistfully, "I envy your wife. She has a husband who dotes on her so much." Later, Michael called his wife. Since she didn't have his number saved, she asked, "Who is this?" Before he could introduce himself, a man's voice interrupted from her side. "Sweetheart, you're pregnant. Stop running around." The man was actually a family member of a pregnant patient, but Michael jumped to the conclusion that Emily was having an affair. He hung up abruptly, furious and muttering about her shameless behavior. Meanwhile, Mary called Emily and said, "My uncle will definitely contact you tonight. Wait for him at home." Emily agreed. She waited all night, but he never came. The next morning, a moody Michael snapped at his staff. Just then, Emily nearly collided with a stack of boxes, but Michael rushed over, pulling her into his arms. She looked up at him, and he asked coolly, "Planning to stay in my arms forever?" Flustered, she quickly apologized. During a checkup for a male patient named John, he groped Emily and grabbed her waist. She shoved him away and slapped him. Enraged, John yelled, "I'm a shareholder of this hospital. How dare you hit me?" He raised his hand to strike her, but Michael intercepted, snarling, "Touch my student, and you're dead." John sneered, "Lend her to me for 2 days, and I'll invest another $2 million. Michael punched him, declaring, "I'm not just a doctor, I'm the Smith Group heir. My student's dignity isn't for sale." John knelt, begging forgiveness, but Michael stripped him of his shares, cut all ties, and had bodyguards drag him to the police. Emily was moved. She hadn't expected Michael to defend her so fiercely. The next day, Emily walked into Michael's office and accidentally saw him shirtless, his abs on full display. He calmly buttoned his shirt while she blushed and apologized. After realizing his recent gloom stemmed from tensions with his wife, she reassured him gently, "There might be misunderstandings between you two. I'm sure you're both good people." Deciding to reconcile, Michael took Emily shopping for gifts for his wife. Mary called Emily again. "I'll drag my uncle over tonight to apologize." As they entered the mall, the managers and sales staff displayed a dazzling array of expensive gifts, all prepared by Michael for his wife. Emily wanted to buy a tie for her husband. Surprised to learn she was married, Michael picked out a tie for her husband. She lifted the tie to his chest to visualize the pattern. His breath hitched as her fingertips grazed his shirt. In the evening, Emily and Mary had been waiting for Michael, but he never showed up. It was only then that Emily remembered he might have gone to the villa he had given her as a gift. However, she had lent that villa to a couple from the countryside who had come for medical treatment. Indeed, Michael had gone to the villa, and the one who opened the door for him was a pregnant woman. Her husband walked over and affectionately called her wife. Michael was furious, convinced that his wife had cheated on him. Enraged, he threw away the gifts he had brought and left. When Emily rushed back to the villa, she asked the couple if a man had come looking for her. The couple had secretly taken the gifts Michael had discarded and didn't want to be found out, so they lied, saying no man had come looking for Emily. Later, Michael called Mary and told her he would give his wife $10 million, but wanted to divorce her as soon as possible. Worried that Emily would be heartbroken, Mary chose not to tell her the truth. To reconcile Michael and Emily, Mary invited them to a medical summit. That evening, Emily dressed elegantly for the banquet, looking like a noble princess, stunning Michael. At the banquet, Emily ran into her college classmate Bruce, who harassed her in public and even proposed to keep her as his mistress. He reached out to touch her face, but she slapped him. His female secretary walked over and slapped Emily in return. Michael stepped in and asked Bruce, "How dare you touch my woman?" Bruce sneered, "Who are you?" Michael put his arm around Emily's shoulders and replied, "I'm her husband." He then ordered his bodyguards to slap Bruce and his secretary. Bruce, intimidated, dared not cause more trouble and left in a hurry with his secretary. Michael praised Emily for looking beautiful that evening. In fact, he hadn't recognized her as his wife. He had only said so to help her out of the situation. Shortly after, he left temporarily due to urgent matters. Because Emily was alone, a waitress looked down on her, suspecting that she was just an influencer trying to gain attention, and attempted to have security throw her out. Michael's voice rang out, "Who dares to throw her out?" The waitress immediately apologized to Emily. During the charity auction at the banquet, a ring caught the attention of all the female guests, leading to fierce bidding. Bruce offered $10 million and mocked Michael and Emily for being poor. Michael encouraged Emily to bid, so she confidently raised the price to $15 million, stunning everyone in the room. Michael then gave the ring to Emily. However, Bruce ridiculed him, saying he was just putting on a show and couldn't afford the ring. Just then, Tom entered the banquet hall. Bruce immediately greeted him with excessive flattery. However, Tom suddenly slapped him hard and said, "The man standing before you is none other than Michael, the heir of the Smith Group." Bruce trembled in fear, quickly apologized to Michael, and fled the scene. That night, Michael was heartbroken and drunk over his wife's supposed infidelity. Emily went to the bar to pick him up and brought him home. She made him a bowl of hangover soup, but as she turned around, Michael suddenly appeared behind her, startling her. In her panic, she accidentally grabbed his bathrobe, causing both of them to fall onto the sofa. Water droplets from his wet hair dripped onto her collarbone. While they were out for a late-night snack, Michael told Emily, "I'm in a bad mood today because my wife cheated on me." She comforted him, "I don't know the details, but if she divorced you, it's definitely her loss." He was touched and stared at Emily for a long time. After their meal, as they sat in the car, Michael suddenly leaned closer to her. Her heart raced, and she felt nervous. He then calmly said, "You forgot to buckle your seatbelt." Coincidentally, Olivia witnessed this moment and assumed Emily was being kept by a rich man. She secretly took photos of them. The next day, Olivia splashed water on Emily's face, showed her the photos, and accused her of being shameless and seducing men everywhere. However, in reality, Olivia herself had long been the mistress of the hospital director. During a meeting, the director deliberately assigned Emily to take care of a wealthy patient named Jack, who was notorious for his lecherous behavior. After the meeting, the director flirted with Olivia, holding her in his arms and promising to teach Emily a lesson. The moment Jack saw Emily, he took the opportunity to touch her hand. His assistant poured her a glass of water and secretly drugged it. Sensing something off, Emily refused to drink it, but Jack became angry and forbade her from leaving. She pretended to take a sip, but quickly splashed the water onto his face. When she tried to leave, his assistant blocked her way. Jack, furious, slapped her hard and attempted to assault her. At that moment, Michael kicked the door open and shouted, "Let her go." He took off his suit jacket and draped it over Emily. Then he landed a heavy punch on Jack. He announced he would destroy Jack's career, causing Jack to drop to his knees and beg Emily for forgiveness. Michael ordered his bodyguards to escort Jack to the police station. Suddenly, Emily felt her body burning up. That was when Michael realized something was wrong with the incense in the room. As he tried to get up and inspect the situation, Emily clung to him tightly and kissed his Adam's apple. He gently lifted her hands and reminded her to stay conscious, but she passed out in his arms. He also started feeling dizzy, but he forced himself to stay alert, carried her in his arms, and left. 2 days later, Michael exposed the hospital director's crimes. It turned out the director had knowingly assigned young female doctors to Jack despite being aware of his reputation, leading to several female doctors being assaulted by him. After receiving a report, the police arrived at the hospital and arrested the director. Olivia, as his accomplice, was also taken into custody. Emily gave Olivia a hard slap, condemning her for her malicious schemes. She initially thought it was the female director who had uncovered the truth, but the director told her that it was actually Michael. 2 days prior, he had arrived at the hospital with a group of bodyguards and combed through numerous documents to uncover the evidence of the male director's collusion with Jack. Michael's cousin, Felix, had just returned to the country when he accidentally hit Emily with his car. He fell for her at first sight, but soon recognized her as his cousin Michael's wife. Noticing that Emily had no memory of her husband, Felix decided to impersonate Michael and reunite with her. To his surprise, she actually believed him. The next day, Felix arrived with a bouquet of flowers to take Emily on a date. Michael happened to see this and mistakenly assumed that his cousin Felix was actually Emily's husband. Feeling heartbroken, he went to a bar to drink. Coincidentally, Felix also took Emily to the same bar. His friends suggested spiking her drink with an aphrodisiac, but their conversation was overheard by Emily. She pretended to drink, but suddenly splashed the alcohol onto Felix and asked, "How does drugged wine taste?" One of Felix's friends picked up a bottle, intending to attack her, but Michael intercepted him and kicked him to the ground. Then, he shoved Felix onto the sofa and punched him several times. Emily stopped Michael, took his hand, and led him out of the bar. After tending to Michael's wounds, she was about to leave, but accidentally stumbled into his arms. Their faces were so close that they nearly kissed. Later, Michael sent Emily a text, suggesting a divorce. Since she mistakenly believed her husband to be a womanizer, she was more than happy to agree. The next afternoon at 3, they met outside the Civil Affairs Bureau. Sitting in his car, Michael spotted Emily and was stunned. Hastily, he took out the marriage certificate and examined the photo, finally realizing that the woman he had been working with every day was actually his wife. At that moment, he no longer wanted a divorce, which infuriated Emily. Back at the hospital, the female director grew curious about Emily's husband and took a look at her marriage certificate. She was shocked to discover that Emily's husband was none other than Michael. Just then, Michael arrived at the hospital. He walked up to Emily and said, "Because of various reasons, we never officially met before, but I have fallen in love with you once again. Due to my negligence, you have suffered so much. Can you forgive me?" Their colleagues cheered loudly, "Forgive him. Forgive him." Emily smiled and replied, "Then I'll give you another chance." Overjoyed, Michael hugged her tightly. Feeling shy, she asked him to let go, but he whispered, "I won't. I'll never let you go for the rest of my life." She smiled and hugged him back.